Hello everyone. Today we'll discuss about the radius bone. Now first of all, the side determination, of course, very important thing. Now over here, remember the upper end of the radius is actually having disc shaped structure, and that is known as the head of the radius bone, while the lower end of the radius is actually expanded with a styloid process, as you can see in this diagram. Okay, in the lower end is actually having one styloid process in the expanded area. Now next is at the lower end, the anterior surface is actually in the form of a thick prominent ridge, okay, while the posterior surface present 4 grooves for the extensor tendon. So in the anterior surface of the lower end, there is thick prominent ridge, while at the posterior surface of the lower end, there are basically 3 to 4 grooves, we can say, for the extensor tendon attachment. Okay, now next, also the sharpest border of the shaft is the medial border. So by this you can determine the sides. Okay, whatever the sharpest areas, you can see over the interosseous border, we can say the medial border or the interosseous border of this particular radius bone is sharp and represents the medial part or the medial border of the radius bone. Okay, now remember, close to the neck of the particular radius bone, as you can see, is the head and this is the neck. So close to the neck, it presents a radial tuberosity, and remember the radial tuberosity is basically present or directed towards the medial side. Okay, now the lower end basically presents a tubercle on the posterior surface known as the dorsal tubercle of Lister. Okay, so at the posterior surface, we can see the at the posterior surface at the lower end, that represents a tubercle known as the dorsal tubercle of the Lister. So now next are the features of the radius bone. Now first of all, the upper end. Now the upper end basically represents first of all the head. Okay, the head is basically disc shaped and is covered with hyaline cartilage. Now remember, in the radius bone, the head is basically present in the upper end, while in the ulna bone, remember, in the ulna, the head is basically present at the lower end. Okay, so this head of the radius is basically present at the upper end and is disc shaped. Now it is basically superior concave surface which articulates, of course, with the capitulum of the humerus bone at the elbow joint. Okay, the superior surface of this basically articulates with the capitulum of the humerus bone. Now the circumference of the head is basically articular, and it basically fits into the socket formed by the radial notch of the ulna and the annular ligament, and thus this actually forms the superior radio-ulnar joint. Okay, now the neck. Now the neck region is basically enclosed by the narrow lower margin of the annular ligament. Okay, and the head and neck are basically free from capsular ligament or capsular attachment and can rotate freely within the socket over here. Okay, now next is tuberosity, or the radial tuberosity present towards the medial side. Remember, this tuberosity lies just below the medial part of the neck, and it has rough posterior part and a smooth anterior part. Now next thing is the shaft of the radius bone. Now the shaft has basically 3 borders and 3 surfaces. That is the 3 borders, that is the anterior border, posterior border, and the medial or the interosseous border, which is the sharpest border of all, okay, in the radius bone. Now first of all, the anterior border. Now this border actually extends from the anterior margin of the radial tuberosity up to the styloid process in the lateral part. So we can say this particular anterior border passes from the medial to the lateral side, we can say, right, because the radial tuberosity is basically present in the medial direction, okay, while the styloid process in the lateral direction. Okay, now it is oblique in the upper half of the shaft and vertical in the lower half, as I told you before, only obliquely in the upper part and almost vertical in the lower part. Okay, the oblique part is known as the anterior oblique line. Okay, and the lower vertical part is actually crest like somewhat. Now the posterior border. Now the posterior border is actually the mirror image of the anterior border, but is clearly defined only in its middle 1/3 part. Okay, it is the same as the anterior border direction. Okay, but remember the posterior border is actually not clear, just like the anterior border. And the upper oblique part of the posterior border is known as the posterior oblique line. Okay, so remember, the oblique part of the anterior border is known as the anterior oblique line, while the oblique part of the posterior border is known as the posterior oblique line. Simple. Now last is the medial or the interosseous border. Now this border is the sharpest of the all three borders, and it basically extends from the radial tuberosity above to the posterior margin of the ulnar notch below, extending from the radial tuberosity up to the posterior margin of the ulnar notch. Now the interosseous or the medial border basically is attached to the interosseous membrane, okay, in its lower 3/4 part. Okay, now this interosseous membrane basically connects the radius with the ulna, simple. Now in its lower part, it forms the posterior margin of an elongated triangular area. Now next is the surfaces over here. Now it is basically, of course, again three surfaces. There is the anterior surface, posterior surface and the lateral surface. First of all, the anterior surface of this. Now first of all, the anterior surface. Now the anterior surface of the radius basically lies between the anterior and the interosseous border, or we can say the medial border, and the nutrient foramen basically opens in the upper part of this particular surface and is directed upwards. The nutrient artery over here is a branch of the anterior interosseous artery. So remember, nutrient foramen opens over here and directed towards the upward side, and the nutrient artery over here is a branch of the anterior interosseous artery. Now next is the posterior surface. Of course, this lies between the posterior and the interosseous border. And the last is the lateral surface lying between the anterior and the posterior borders, and it shows a roughened area in its middle part. Now next is the lower end of the radius. Now the lower end of the radius is actually widest part of this particular radius bone, and it has basically 5 surfaces. Now these 5 surfaces are, first of all, the anterior surface, then the posterior surface, medial surface, lateral surface and the inferior surface. So first of all, the anterior surface of the lower part or lower end of the radius bone. The anterior surface is actually in the form of a thick prominent ridge, and the radial artery is basically palpated against this anterior surface. Okay, remember the radial artery is palpated over here. And next is the posterior surface. Now the posterior surface is actually having 4 grooves for the extensor tendon. I told you before only that the posterior surface basically 4 grooves for the extensor tendon, and the dorsal tubercle of Lister lies lateral to an oblique groove. Okay. And next is the medial surface. The medial surface basically occupied by the ulnar notch for the head of the ulna. I told you before only that the ulna is actually having the head in its lower end. Okay, so over here the medial surface is occupied by ulnar notch for the head of the ulna to be attached at the radius surface. So over here we are having the ulnar notch for the ulna. Next is the lateral surface. Now this lateral surface is actually prolonged downward to form the styloid process, of course. And lastly, the inferior surface bears a triangular area for the scaphoid bone. Okay, so the scaphoid bone is actually one of the wrist bone. Okay, so the inferior surface bears a triangular area for the scaphoid bone and a medial quadrangular surface for the lunate bone. The lunate bone is also one of the wrist bone. Now this surface takes part in forming the wrist joint. Okay, now next is the attachments at the radius bone. Now first of all, remember the biceps brachii is actually inserted into the rough posterior part of the radial tuberosity. Remember, at the radial tuberosity posterior part there is attachment of the biceps brachii insertion. Okay, now the anterior part of this tuberosity or the radial tuberosity is covered by a bursa. Now next is the supinator. The supinator muscle is basically inserted into the upper part of the lateral surface. Now the pudendal teres is basically inserted into the middle part of the lateral surface of the radius bone. And remember, the brachioradial is basically inserted into the lowest part of the lateral surface just above the styloid process. Remember, in the series, supinator, pudendal teres and brachioradial is inserted into the upper, middle and the lowest part of the lateral surface of the radius bone respectively. Okay. Now remember, the radial head of the flexure digitorum superficial is basically originating from the anterior oblique line and the upper part of the anterior border of the radius bone. Also remember, the pudendal quadratus muscle is basically inserted into the lower part of the anterior surface of the radius and also into the triangular area on the medial side of the lower end of the radius. Now one more important thing is that at the medial part to the anterior border of the radius, means medial to the anterior border of the radius, there is presence of the radial artery. The radial artery is basically present medial to the anterior border of the radius. Okay, and that's why at this area the radial pulse is easily palpated over here. Now next thing is about the applied aspects of the radius bone. Now remember, the radius bone commonly gets fractured about 2 cm above its lower end. Okay, and this fracture is basically known as the Colles fracture. Now this Colles fracture is caused by the fall on the outstretched hand, and the distal fragment over here is displaced upward and backward, and the radial styloid process comes to lie proximal to the ulnar styloid process. Okay, now remember, if the distal fragment gets displaced anteriorly, it is known as the Smith's fracture. So remember, if the distal fragment is displaced upward and backward, it is known as the Colles fracture, and if the distal fragments gets displaced anteriorly, it is known as the Smith's fracture. Now next is the pulled elbow. Now this basically occurs in the small kids or children. Okay, now in this, whenever you just try to lift the small kid with the help of his particular, by holding the wrist or the forearm, okay, the particular jerk, a very sudden jerk basically happens over here in the elbow part, and because of the sudden powerful jerk on the head of the child, this jerk basically causes dislodging of the head of the radius from the grip of the annular ligament. Okay, and as because of this, the subluxation of the head of the radius occur, known as the pulled elbow. So this was all about the radius bone. I hope you enjoyed it well. Thank you so much.